Want to know more about rock, jazz, rhythm, and blues? You got to start from the bottom up. The Bass Guitar Channel radio show with David C. Gross and Tom Semioli. Two bass road warriors tell tales, interview the greats, and spin more great music than you can shake a Chapman stick at. The Bass Guitar Channel radio show with your hosts, David C. Gross and Tom Semioli, every Monday at 8 on Cygnus Radio.
Welcome again to another edition of the Bass Guitar Channel radio show. Tonight we have an incredible show along with my co-host, KnowYourBassPlayer.com honcho, Tom Semioli. We're going to be talking with an old friend of mine, Carmine Rojas, who's played with everyone from David Bowie to Rod Stewart to Joe Bonamassa. Oh, the list goes on and on. So we're on CygnusRadio.com, so let's give a listen. Hi, Carmine. How you doing?
All right. Look at you guys. Oh, look how cute.
So how are you?
I'm good. We just, this whole lockdown shit's trying, because we're sociable people.
Right. Yes,
we are. You share stuff, you shake hands, you hugs, share a pub, something. But I have good patience. My girl and I am a little doggy, it's been great, but it's been really very strange to not socialize, when you're just accustomed to having a conversation, like talking and developing this whole thing with Zoom, which is actually great. So far, mentally, it's just a little strange to get used to, especially traveling around the world so much. And I have friends all over the planet and, we've been Zooming it, basically. Yeah, you guys are looking great.
Well, we're not in L.A. We're in the East Coast where we're freezing to death here.
Yeah, this morning it got a little chill. That's why I had this on, because I had to go walk the dog real quick.
I feel bad for you. Yeah.
Wait for the song, like a George Harrison song.
Hey, Carmine, let's talk. You grew up in Brooklyn. What music was resonating in the Rojas household, and how did you gravitate towards being a bass player?
Interesting. I actually started off as a drummer, kind of rhythm stuff, because where I grew up in Brooklyn, it's all Puerto Ricans. So we had salsa, merengue, and Afro-Cuban. Where I grew up. So we had on our radio growing up as a kid, it was always Latin or R&B, like Stax and Motown, combination of all that stuff early on, or doo-wop, late 50s, early 60s, before the English invasion. So AM radio in New York, you could hear, Frank Sinatra and Black Sabbath, the same station back then.
And
so
Joe Cuba.
It was pretty normal. Yeah, it was pretty normal here on doo-wop band, like the Four Seasons. Then you hear, Led Zeppelin or something. It was a weird combination.
It was more democratic back in those days, you will.
Nice word, nice way to say it. Yeah, especially these blessed times. No offense to anybody else on that side.
That's right.
Yeah, it was just picking up the bass was something that happened by accident at a friend's basement, and they needed a bass player, and there's this chunk of wood, a position that they had, and it was like, what am I going to do with that thing? I think it's a big piece of wood. Drums are easy. You just get a stick and then walk away from it. But my brother, when he was alive, he ended up being a better drummer and a better keyboard player. He picked it up, my younger brother. So I ended up switching off to bass. But the sonic sound of it, like the Stevie Wonder song, I Was Made to Love Her, stuff like that, or the Latin bass, the way it would come off the radio, or reggae bass, was so prominent, going, what is that smooth blanket kind of a feeling, kind of a thing? And it was so simple of everything else that I can actually see it clearly.
Right.
So I never really adapted looking at it that way, but it always affected me going, oh, what's that? What's that? You hear Chris Squire. What the hell is that? Ron Wood back with just the Jeff Beck group, playing with a pick and Marshall sax behind him going, what is that? What is all that shit going on? It was tempting. So I ended up kind of going towards that and finding, I gave it up 3 times, to be honest. I just couldn't get it, because I was trying too hard. When I stopped trying hard, it happened organically. So the stuff I was listening to between, Latin and R&B and the Animals and the, early Beatle invasions, before 66, before the hardcore stuff like Hendrix and The Who and all. And in New York, we used to have the Murray Decay Theater, which had all those bands playing together, and the Fillmore East, the Electric Circus. We had all this around us besides radio. And everyone in Brooklyn, especially Puerto Rican neighborhood, would always play the radio live, having the radios in the window. So the summer, you would hear all kinds of stuff, dancing in the street, literally. It was sonically, it was a happy feeling, which gravitated me to I was playing music. And
so you certainly got an education listening to radio and in your neighborhood. Did you ever study music formally at all?
No, but I'm just realizing in public school, as a kid, I was pushed to play viola, I had to really think about this. I had to look in old high school, those report cards. You know, my third grade report card, and it was on there about I need to study more if I want to get better on the viola. And I'm going, viola? I never played a viola, you know. And I'm thinking, yeah, I do actually. I remember Rosalind, the stuff that cleans the strings.
Yep.
That came to my mind first. And then my gate opened up, my brain opened up going, wow. But I kind of never really stuck to it until years later and ended up picking up the bass and keyboards.
You know, it's funny, Carmine, because you said something a little bit earlier that Tom and I, last week, we did a show on guitar players who play the bass.
Watch out. Careful with that.
Yeah. Well, believe me, I did many disclaimers. I'll probably get killed before the month is over.
I'll watch it back.
But you brought something up that I always talk with Tom about is how important Ron Wood was to us kids growing up as bass players. Fabulous.
Yeah, I got my Atelier bass because of Ron, and I always tell him about it. And we got really close over the years, and it's a big laugh because you know I'm going to the Fillmore and I see these guys looking like peacocks with crushed velvet pants at the Fillmore East.
Yeah.
And I'm going, what the, and they're looking just precious, and playing this stuff. And then you got this rattle on one side with a pick. I go, wow, what an interesting character of a sound. And Woody really played great because he was a guitar player. But again, with your conversation, guitar players will switch the bass and make it easier, but they're not playing bass. They're playing guitar parts. Woody knew how to capture a bass sound and the groove of it, and so did Chris Squire and Paul McCartney.
Exactly.
There are only a few people who could flip over and go, all right, that's actually a bass player playing bass.
Well, we trashed John Lennon for Helter Skelter, and we certainly gave Keith a bad time for his version of Live With Me versus Bill's on the live Yayas.
Well, you have to kind of, but I'll give John a pass.
Okay.
So
Carmine, how did you break into studio work?
That didn't happen. That happened early, but it was kind of it was not, like I said. I sent you something before. My first real professional job was in '72 with LaBelle, but it's like being a scientist because the way I play live, I had to really adapt for studio because less is more.
Right. That's a good right.
And finding not to get too groovy with the part or whatever, you have to have a really great producer or an engineer say, hey, maybe we can do this part here, all that let you let you be creative. That was a bit tricky part because that took me a while because I'm such a live player. I love having the freedom of being Tim Bogart or being Jack Bruce or being Puerto Rican or something, whatever it is. Yeah. Combination of all of it. And but the studio was what I found out as a kid. It was very restricting, and I had to really be patient and understand it. But I got a really good schooling early on in '75 from Alan Toussaint.
Yes.
Who taught me the thing, less is more, which I couldn't figure out what the hell that meant because we were New York players. Right. We were coming down to do a LaBelle album, the second LaBelle album that it was in a series of after Lady Marmalade, the second album, Chameleon album, I think it is. Yep. And it was Phoenix album. And he just says, he saw me play with the drummer and with those guys, and it was too much. And I felt it was too much. I'm going, if I play less, maybe I won't be respected as much or whatever. Minimal notes. And being a fan of George Porter and him being in the room, working with them, because they did the bulk of the album. But it was a pleasure watching George Porter work with Alan Toussaint.
A master.
Working out parts. And then Alan was really gracious of letting me play 3 songs on the album and showing me about, you know what, you could do that. You could minimalize that. And I'm going, what do I do? He says, don't play. I went, huh? He said, don't play any more than you have to. Listen to the other guys. And that's when I got into the studio work, listening to other people and just minimalizing the parts and finding fat grooves, even if it's one note. So I went back at that time, I went back to Beatle albums. I went back to a lot of old albums going, okay, that's why the bass sticks out so fucking much. It sticks out like, that's why it sticks like Latin bass and R&B bass and reggae bass. It's right there of minimal parts about feel and about what fits for the song. So I got really deeply, because of Alan Toussaint, into doing pop, rock R&B bass lines, looking for those things.
I listened to your early work with LaBelle, and you really, even though you're saying you're playing minimally, you do get to stretch out harmonically and rhythmically, and you had a beautiful tone. Now, I guess watching George Porter, were you using the P bass as well?
I used his bass.
Oh, you did? Okay.
So it would sound, so everything would sound pretty much the same.
Okay.
But the early LaBelle stuff, that was my jazz bass. That first album scared the crap out of me because Stevie Wonder was producing the tracks. And it was my first professional, LaBelle, wow. Nona and Patti LaBelle, they really trusted me. I mean, they pulled me in on this thing, and I'm going, I don't know, this is deep. This isn't like playing in somebody's house or whatever. This is, RCA Studios in New York. There's Stevie Wonder he came in to do 2 songs with LaBelle.
Right.
Using 2 songs. And I went, holy crap. 1972, I'm going, you got to be kidding. And I had to set up next to him. I'm like shitting, pissing, trying to keep it calm. I'm really nervous because I don't read charts. At that point, I wasn't reading charts. I read chords. So he says, I'm going to give you 3 chords, fill up the lines like a Chuck Rainey thing, because he knew I was a Chuck Rainey fan because of the way I played. I went, okay. And I'm afraid thinking maybe I'll be too much or whatever. And then I came up that line, that first professional album, and I just went for it. It came out amazing. Stevie said, yeah, do that again. I went, okay. And I could not remember what I did. So if you notice, every time the chorus would come around, the line would change because I couldn't remember what I did previous. But back then, bass players had a lot of liberty.
Yes, they did.
Chuck Rainey, James Jameson, because that was a real, growing up, listening to those guys lead the way. And it was a beautiful having a lead bass with the vocals like Paul McCartney would do.
Yeah.
The Beatles. And it was just something beautiful about like a cello that had that kind of tone. And yeah, I got away with some good, but I didn't really get away with it. They actually went, yeah, that's cool, leave it. And the same thing with David. He was the same way too. I would just try something and David would go, what was that? And I went, oh shit, what was that? And I come up with something else. He said, oh, even better, keep that. And he would keep the mistakes and do something with the mistakes, David, But early on, jumping into sessions, it was another education because I didn't read as well. I had to really learn as I was going in. And working with producers and engineers, they were really supportive. And I would always go into a session when my trick was, I look at the guitar chart, not the bass chart. Because I can see the full chord what it is. If it's a minor 9 or a major 7, because usually the root notes were always, dotted, the root. I'm going, oh, what is that chord? That's a great chord. I was always curious about colors and chords. Right. And I would always expand on the lines. That's where I would find out beautiful parts floating keyboards and major 9s and major 7s and 6s and 5s and moving the root notes, playing the 5 against the chord or whatever, gospel stuff. And that stuff was, early on. And my ears were wide open to like Dumbo the Elephant. Yeah.
Well, those are good. Actually, McCartney's a good role model to have because, again, Paul didn't always voice lead with roots. He would come in with chromatic lines, modal lines, whether he knew they were modal or not, voice leading with 3rds and 7s and things like that. So you gradually developed your skills as a reader. But, a lot of the guys David and I have talked to, whether it be...
I'm not a great reader. I'll be honest, I'm not a great reader, but I can get by because I go early. And I studied the chart and everything else. I look at the keyboard chart, guitar charts. Right. I do the homework. I go in and find who the producer are and who the engineers are and what are their favorite kind of things or what their backgrounds are. Okay. So I do a lot of, it's important to do history. It's important to know who you're working with, pretty much.
Yeah, and it's very, very important for young bass players to know this in terms of you have to be prepared. And even if you're not 100% prepared, go in there with your ears open and your mouth shut, basically. You're also talking about less is more. And it always brings up that Miles Davis thing where he was playing with Coltrane and Coltrane was on 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30. Right. And he goes off stage and he looks at Miles and says, I'm sorry, I didn't know what to do. And you know what Miles said? Take the horn out of your mouth.
Oh, that's always a classic line. Exactly right. Don't play. You're trying to figure out, he really doesn't want me to play. No, it means, just really approach it with the rhythm section. But you really, growing up, again, Latin, R&B, you had to be, you and the drummer had to be very unique because I thought Trevor from the Ziggy Stardust album, Trevor Bolton, English bass player, was kind of unique. I think it had a lot to do with Tony Visconti, who produced the album. Right, another bass player. He's a bass player too, right? Yeah. So it was unique playing those classical lines with the bass, really raw and rough. I just thought it was watching Vanilla Fudge do hang on, what's that Supreme song?
Keep me hanging on.
Yeah, it's like, what did these guys just do? Take some acid or something, you know? But for Trevor, going back to Trevor, sorry, Tim Bogart, you know, I'm still sad that, you know, he was a blessing for a lot of us when we were growing up.
Sure was.
Free-form bass player, you know, like Jack Bruce. But Trevor was interesting how he played on the Ziggy Stardust album, which I thought was really clever because you mix classical music, classical bass parts, prog, trying to do R&B with a pick, you know, and It was a great combination. I said, that's really cool. And a lot of my friends going, oh, I don't know, is this kind of trash or whatever? I said, no, it's really distinctive and it's very different. So I easily gravitated to that kind of sound, that kind of bass sound, besides my R&B and Latin roots or whatever. It was, you know, my hit, if I can get in a session and they let me go freely, I would play all my influences, come up with ideas that reflected on those songs or that time period.
Well, it's interesting how you built upon that because you were with David when he was at his commercial apex, you know, the big hit records. Now, you know, since he's passed, a lot of archival material has come out. One of the things that really blew me away was you're playing on the Glass Spider tour, because I'm listening to that, and I had seen that tour, but you're doing a lot of melodic chord extensions. You're doing all sorts of different harmonies, especially on tracks like Rebel Rebel, which was Herbie Flowers, and, of course, Cracked Actor, which was Trevor. Was Bowie the type of band leader that let you go for it, that didn't sort of dictate what you had to do? He
was an original. And I have to say, out of all the people I've worked with all my career, he was the easiest. Because, you know, if you walk into a room and go, okay, what would you like? It was never like that. You just sat there and he would dictate certain little things and he would go for the mistakes or he would go for this kind of feel. I mean, the Last Dance album, which I didn't know, there was some politics going on between him and Nile Rodgers, who were great together. Yeah. But he was making sure that, me personally, I think he was making sure that Chic didn't play on the whole album. Right. So it wouldn't sound like a Sister Sledge or Madonna or whatever at that time period. And use different guys, use organic guys, which is handpicked by us, Omar Key, myself, Tony Thompson. The tracks, they were really small skeletons of ideas. I'm going, okay, we're going to have to put a lot of meat on this shit, you know? And so we just kind of went, like Let's Dance was a very small bass line that Now was coming up with. It sounded like almost like a Chic groove. If it was cool by them, they would have kept it. But obviously I could hear, again, the melodic, the F sharp, you know, the melodic notes going across it or whatever, just kind of to build up on it. And at the time, Omar and I were into the Gap Band. You know, it was the 80s. You know, and then we wanted to make it like a stomp, you know, big stomp. Don't, you know, don't drop the bomb on me. You know, it had that kind of a stomp effect to it. And I just filled up the line better all the way across to the F sharp, which wasn't there, or the fourth, which wasn't there. So,
well, I got to tell you, you know, I never thought of it about the Gap Band and Chic, but it's definitely true. But think about this, Carmine. If anyone in the country, even around the world, if you go, let's dance, everyone's going to know, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. I mean, it's fucking legendary.
Yeah. And again, it's a simple line because it's just jump, all in between the beats. You know, it just had that kind of that 70s kind of a groove going into the 80s, you know. It's just which we couldn't let go, but Dave was like, yes, you know, this is great. And at that point in time it was just Niles, Omar, myself, and the keyboard player. It was very raw. I mean, very, very spacious. I mean, it's like going, what else is coming in? You know, I don't know if I'm going to be in the way of horn players or background singers. Right. So it was really minimalism. I mean, full out, nothing was there. So, and in my head, I'm going, well, I saw the Diamond Dogs tour in Philly, and I'm into, you know, Station to Station album and the early Ziggy. You know, I'm hoping I'm able to create something that would be lasting, not knowing that it would come out that way. Right. And we're thinking, what kind of album is this? You know, he's going to have, you know, there was rumor of having Albert King originally to play it on the guitar going, I'm a big Albert King fan, but how's that? You know, David can see it. We couldn't. David could see it. He saw the bigger picture of doing the contrast, which is David's amazing, you know, and David as a painter and artist, absolutely fabulous. An actor too, so.
But, you know, also, Carmine, that you were talking at the dawn of MTV, and it was important not only to play good, but to look good. And I remember your costuming and your get up for Blue Jean. I don't know if you still have those trousers from Blue Jean. But what about the performance aspect? Go ahead.
I still have the Serrano from the series Moonlight Tour in '83, which I gave to my grandmother because my grandma loved it.
Okay.
And I had to wear sandals, but you can't rock around sandals properly, But the outfit was great. We were South Pacific pirates, basically.
Yes.
With the Roman ruins in the background, series Moonlight Tour, and it was interesting because it didn't bother me being being part of a theater, which is really what it's all about.
Right.
And it didn't bother me being a part of that, being a part of any of that stuff. Same thing with the Glass Spider. It was a combination of street thugs, street neighborhoods kind of a thing, coming down of a spider, giving these babies. It was always very conceptual, and I always like conceptual stuff because of the prog band. So it was very easy for me to adapt. I know there's a lot of other bass players or other musicians who go, no, I'm not going to go there. This is my look. Fuck you. It's not about you. It's about the whole thing.
Right. Exactly.
Sorry. I apologize for that.
No, it's fine. And it's really important that people hear that about it. It's really, and unfortunately, we may have gotten away from a lot of that theater along with the music, but
it got hokey. What happened? It got hokey. For me, honestly, we should have just stayed in a theater in New York for 10 days. Because it's so hard to see in a stadium. If that's visually, it's really very difficult. Even you can have the biggest screen in the world. It's still a lot of information coming at you. Yeah. And when you listen to the Glass Spider album, audio wise, it's a lot of info. And then you look at the audio, the visual, going, holy shit! It's like, wow. You have to sit through each song quietly. I still love that the audio is part of it. It's just absolutely stunning. And visually,
visually is amazing. Yeah.
It was an undertaking, for David. Putting Broadway in stadiums, which actually helped a lot of other bands follow that kind of suit. And I think too, a lot of kids should know that even though we got away with a lot of stuff musically, in a stadium you have to learn physics, meaning less is more literally in a stadium. That's why U2 sounds amazing in a stadium and Tower Power doesn't.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
You have to
even right. I think the knock was on Clarence Clemens. Once Bruce hit with Born to Run, his saxophone lines became a lot more simpler. But when you're playing in front of 40,000 people in a hockey arena, you have to play 3 notes.
Yeah, it's just audio wise. It comes out the delay. Again, you're working with sound, physics. You really have to learn that kind of stuff. And the less you do, the bigger the sound, the bigger everything. Or else it's just it's some arenas are terrible anyway, so it didn't really matter. But the Garden, God bless that place. Growing up, always wanted to play there. That place always sounded amazing. The floor would move, everything would shake at the Garden. 80, what's that? 70? 88.
Okay, and how did you get that gig? Being musical director, that's quite a responsibility.
Well, that happened by accident because with Bowie was Carlos Alomar, who was a great teacher.
Right. Yes.
And it was David and Carlos were great teachers of taking on the young. Absolutely blessed and grateful for that from both of them. The Rod gig came about, but Tony Thompson was going to do out of order. Rod was changing his English band and wanted to do more, getting more, because the Americans know how to play the R&B, the real R&B.
Right.
Memphis Stack stuff. We have, that's kind of ours. And so he wanted a band that can play the R&B stuff, the Memphis stuff, the Stack stuff, and English rock. And that's what he was looking for. Because the English band that he had at the time were very good, but they couldn't really swing it with the like having a party, really swing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, auditions came in from all over the place, all over the world. And luckily, Jeff Gollop, myself, Chuck Kentis, and Tony Thompson got in. And we were called back 3 times for it.
Wow.
So they finally decided to get to this East Coast band. The second time, we got the gig, but we didn't want to dress up like the LA bands. They were like looking to dress us up with spandex and all that kind of stuff. Going, no, we're not like those kind of guys. We don't mind theater, but that kind of theater is for guns, not guns, but Poison and all those.
Right, the hair bands,
the hair bands, exactly. Even though I had kind of an afro back then.
I remember that.
A bit of a fro, a little weird. It was going small. It was getting smaller and smaller over the years.
I called mine an Isro.
I love that. But yeah, it's just. And then what happened? Tony Thompson ended up leaving, and there was because he was actually the music director for the live tour,
right?
And So it just came on to me going, okay, I just learned a lot of stuff from the Bowie tour from Carl's Alamo. I can work it out because they looked at me because they saw me directing traffic all the time.
Okay.
Let's work on this song. Tony, let's do this, whatever. And then we got Tony Brock to come back live. And then I just stayed being a musical director for Rod for whatever, till 2003, I guess, 2002, from 88 to 2002. And that was a great experience because, being a Jeff Beck, Rod Stewart fan and the Faces, it was just great to do. I kept pushing, let's do this song. Let's do Ace Superstitious. Can we put this in? I kept he would always look at it. He wouldn't know what old song did he want. And, I'm just good.
But also you helped introduce Rod to a new generation because now production was becoming a lot more tighter. You remember those Jeff Beck records and those Faces records were kind of ramshackle records. They were recorded in 2 weeks, but you helped Rod expand his sound, yet you kept him rooted to his pub rock tradition.
It was great because, again, some of the songs, especially the ones we co-written with him, we make sure that the bass and drums were up front, strong, and he could just sing the way he would sing, like the Faces would do. It was always finding those melodies that would fit with his vocals was a little tricky, and you can't overpower his voice, and that was the magic too. Some bands you could overpower, and some guys would sing or not sing, but Roddy was the kind of voice where you have to be careful not to overpower his voice, where it sits in the track. So I covered a few songs with him, which came out great with him.
Yeah, we'll get to those. We'll talk. Yeah. And one thing, it's interesting now. So when you go to Joe Bonamassa, you're actually going back to your roots because you're a Ron Wood guy, you're a Tim Bogert guy, and Joe Bonamassa is picking up the mantle from those guys. Yeah, so you get to go back to what you saw at the Fillmore and all those other places.
Yeah, and it was great with Joe because he'll go straight to the English stuff. Yeah, it's like they need the credibility. They need the thumbs up because because of them coming to America, they turned us on to the R&B. Right. Ray Charles and all the blues guys, Holland Wolf and Albert King and BB, whatever. They actually turned us on to it.
Right. They re-educated us.
Re-educated us. Thank you. Yeah. And that was a blessing to give back to them. And that's what Joe wanted to do. And I just thought, wow, the kind of guitar player is, this is going to be fun. And it was fun because everything escalated over there before we got to come back to America doing arenas and everything else.
Now, do you still speak with Tal
Bergman?
Yeah.
Yeah, always, the knucklehead.
Say hi for me.
I will. He's my Hebrew national.
That's exactly right.
He's my hedgehog. I said, yo, Hedge, what are you doing? Actually, yesterday I spoke to him.
Great. Well, say hi for me. I appreciate that.
Yeah, he's been really quiet. Just, he's been doing his little drum stuff, whatever. But, yeah, I brought him in because we needed to escalate the Bonamassa thing. And by bringing him in would put the scale up a bit, musically live, too, because we needed to get – so we wouldn't sound like a traditional blues band, which is what we always try to keep away from, not to be a usual shuffle or whatever, which we can do, which we did later on one of those live things. But it was much more of mixing all the stuff. And Joe was very much into prog, too, like Jethro Tull.
Yeah, you do a lot of great, the Tull class. Well, what I like about your updating, you talk about British blues is when I know he uses Michael Rhodes, who tends to play a 4-string, but you got the 5-string, so we're hearing the low B. So it's not quite, it changes it from retro to something else.
Exactly.
And you can, and Joe, obviously you stretch out on it, as did Tim Bogert, as did Ron Wood, as did Jack Bruce and all those guys.
Yeah. Finding those kind of places are really difficult if you're that kind of a player, like myself, like you guys, where you can throw out a couple little things and match the vocals and match this, whatever. They're very, very difficult, hard to find. I search a lot for those kind of gigs as much as possible, and then still settle for the other stuff, which, I'll rewrite to help people, which is what I'm doing now, rewriting a lot of bass lines with different people. Mm-hmm. Those Bonamassa gigs are rare to come about, and the blessings of all those old bands that we love very dearly, like Free, blessed bands that come up mixing Stax with rock, and Paul Rogers, who today still sings the same way in the same key. And just finding those kind of musical adventures are difficult, but worth the search.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I love the fact that you keep mentioning Stax Volt because I think about if you really listen carefully, as much as we all love Jameson, he played too much.
I don't know how he got away with it too.
Wow. And you were saying that, I did a different thing on this chorus than that. He did everything was different with him.
His feel, I mean, if you catch some songs, it was like a Latin player because he was always pushing.
Yeah.
It was like almost kind of on the up. And it's like, how did he get away with that kind of shit? But you have to have the drummer simple, the guitar part simple, and you get the vocals singing, and you got this line, this guy like running around behind you like a Whirly Dervish kind of a thing,
Exactly.
Dancer.
And then you get Donald Duck Dunn, who's just
boom.
And you can, you talk Stevie Wonder, you think about Michael Henderson, because I'm trying to find him, because his days with Michael Henderson is with Stevie Wonder, and then all the things he did with Miles.
Yeah. And that was the reason for that, because at that point in time, Miles wanted it to be not to be the same jazz standard kind of a thing. He wanted an R&B bass player against it. So, which actually was a really good, and it did work. The purists were really pissed off about it, but the parts actually really work.
Without a doubt. You think about all the things that Miles really created without even knowing it. Ambient music, electronic music. Think about On the Corner.
Oh, that's a great album.
Yeah.
And I think Miles was obviously turned on by Band of Gypsies and what Billy Cox was doing. So he had Michael Henderson lay in that sort of Billy Cox type groove.
Yeah, and Sly and Family Stone. He was a big,
of course.
Miles. He came to. I used to be a roadie for Sly in the mid '70s before playing, which is not on any of your file. This is between you, us, and I went on the road with them for maybe 8 months because I knew all the road crew. They were from the East Coast, not the West Coast. And it was interesting to see Miles and a lot of those guys on the side of the stage watching this phenomenal band play these 3-minute songs on the radio into 8 minutes anthems,
and one chord change.
And it was just majestic. It was just the power of the music, pulsing through the whole night.
Well, if you think about it, you go back to Kinda Blue, where he was starting his modal explorations.
1959.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you go and you have ESP, you have Nefertiti, even In a Silent Way. He's headed that way. And it's interesting because, we all grew up we're listening for a sound. It's how so many bass players sound like so many other bass players today. Yeah, but when you ask all these bass players, who are your heroes? Jack Bruce, Tim Bogart, Jaco. Yeah. They all sounded the same differently.
Yeah. They had the same passion and same pulse. That energy.
Exactly. And I think a lot of it has to do with growing up with what we all grew. I mean, think about Bobby Valentin. I mean, no one knows Bobby Valentin outside of the Latin community. No. But this guy's one of the greatest bass players on the planet.
I wrote down another two, Bobby Rodriguez and Andy Gonzalez.
Andy Gonzalez. That was a little later.
Yeah, that's right.
Bobby listen awesome. To Sol Makossa on the live Fania All-Stars recording.
Yeah, 72, I think it was.
You've got Valentin and just like you, it's like in the pocket with this fabulous groove.
It's funny because it's just space inside the groove with everybody else, and it works. You're just floating subconsciously.
Yeah,
and it works. And that's the way when you play, it should feel subconsciously that you're in it in space with all these guys in that little cubicle. Not even a cubicle. It's just air.
Yeah, really everybody beautiful. Needs to know the clave.
Yes, for sure. For sure. But Ron Carter with Miles, the combination is always and what's his name, the British bass player.
Dave Holland.
Yeah, which I love very much too.
Yeah.
It's just an approach, and I love people that just kind of accent it a little bit different. Going, wow, I would never have went there, And it's an education when you actually say that.
And you're proving the point that
trying to. Yeah.
Everybody listened to everything back then, right, Tom? Everyone listened to everything.
Well, you go back to you talking about, Carmine, you're talking about AM radio. It was Frank Sinatra, David Bowie, and the Rolling Stones in one set.
Yeah, it was Frank Sinatra and Black Sabbath,
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And Maurice.
When we started looking at Billboard charts, you had Kiss, you had Engelbert Humperdinck, you had all these people in the top 5.
Yeah.
And no one thought it was fun. If you think about it, the business really started to change when they said, "Oh, well, this is going to be the R&B chart, and this is going to be the."
Yeah, instead of categorizing it, it took away from the beauty of it being music.
Right, the bean counters took over from the music director.
Exactly.
That was sad because I saw a really major. I just physically felt a major change when it came to 1970 to 71, 72. Things got different from what I was noticing in 66, 67, 68, 69, because it was just like, it was coming out, Santana, Jethro Tull. I mean, these things were coming out of the woodwork. And then you go to the Fillmore and you see 3 great bands for $3. And
exactly,
Tom Paxton, with the Buddy Rich Orchestra or something, it's like, and then
the 2 oddest combinations, right?
Yeah. I Am Butterfly.
I saw Rod Stewart. No, it was If, that horn band out of Britain.
Yeah, I know If, yeah.
They opened for Rod Stewart, who opened for Black Sabbath. That was the bill.
If was the Italian band, If?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember.
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
The only one I think, and this will be funny, that didn't really work was the Monkees and Jimi Hendrix on tour together. That was very drastic for the little kids. It was like, holy crap.
Well, you remember when Hendrix used to play Hunter College?
Yeah, I do.
Lots of great bands played there as well.
Yeah. Cat Mother, I think, opened up. Was it Cat Mother?
Okay, yeah, that's right, because he was producing them.
Yeah, he was producing them. I think Cat Mother was opening up for that show. And then there was a lot of, I saw Hendrix and Jethro Tull together in up near Boston, outside of Vermont. And they were on tour together. Which is great because you have 2 great drummers, Clive Bunker and Mitch Mitchell. And these 2 drastically different kind of drummers.
Well, you remember Don Perry, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love Don Perry.
His favorite drummer was Clive Bunker.
Wow, yeah, he's a great drummer.
And there he ends up, 15 years with Jethro Tull.
Yeah, it's just, those guys, it's about passion. It wasn't about technical, how to get this fifth in, or playing against 7 or something. They would figure that out. Finding a groove inside of it, which was awesome about those English drummers, English bands that would come over, trying to interpret, like Rod Stewart, interpreting Temptations with the Jeff Beck group. And they did a bad job at it, but what came out of it was beautiful. It was like, oh man, that's really a great interpretation of rock. So we had a lot of great young bands. And those guys were, 22 years old? Cream? 21, 23?
Yeah, we were very lucky.
Yeah, there were kids with fucking sideburns and Afghan coats.
Yeah, but by that time, they'd been on the bandstand for years, in the UK.
Yeah, and they'd been playing a lot of clubs and listening to a lot of the R&B stuff that we were not listening to.
Right.
They were listening to all that kind of stuff, like I said, Howlin' Wolf and the John Mayall Blues Breakers. They were absorbing so much of it, and then bringing it back to us and going back to the Bonamassa, we brought it back to them. And
that's wonderful. Yeah, that's great stuff.
They're still such a big fan. Europe is such a big fan of the Bonamassa thing that we had.
Yeah, it must have been fabulous.
No, it was great because I got to play. I got to hear sonically a guitar player like playing next to Clapton, but on a different level. Because I'm a big Clapton fan from the Cream days. Into Derek Bonamos, and that's pretty much about it. And
you must have been playing Murray the K. Thing where Cream and the Who played together.
Yeah. I saw the Mitch Ryder. Yeah, the Who. It was the same show, but I saw another one, a different one, and it had the Searchers, and that's they had the early English band come in Brooklyn. It was a great combination between the Motown and the English bands, and oh man, it was a fantastic time as a kid growing up, sneaking out of school and going to the Singer Bowl Stadium in Queens.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, seeing Hendrix, Chapman Brothers, Janis Joplin, Soft Machine opening up. Those 4 on the bill. And the week before, I saw the Who and and the Doors.
Well, Tom and I did a show on the Canterbury scene, and we were playing lots of Soft Machine. This is like about a month or so ago.
Yeah, that was out there. But, you talk about melding the styles. It's kind of common when you look at your career with Bowie and Rod. I mean, it's no different than the Stones going to Muscle Shoals. It's no different than Jeff Beck tried to record with Motown. So David and Rod look to you, who came from the streets of New York, to give them that authenticity.
That's absolutely right. And David's such a great casting director, too. I mean,
yes, he was.
You have to give him credit for having all those kind of musicians and bands play in and out of his life. What a great casting director.
And then, of course, you're doing the repertory thing with the Bowie.
A Bowie celebration, which is with Mike Garson as the matriarch.
Yes.
Which is a great education, especially with Mike Garson. I see Mike Garson and Carlos Alomar on the same level because those guys are just amazing musicians, amazing. Just so much education, so much stuff in their brain that's hard to shut them up. Put a helmet on them.
How are some of the young audiences that didn't get to experience Bowie live taking to what you're doing with Mike and Carl? The Bowie repertory.
They're absorbing it because we're giving it to them exactly the way it went down.
Yeah.
There's a big difference of a cover band or a tribute band. We're actually playing the same way, not playing the songs exactly the same. We just adapt and add all this other stuff. And it depends on the singer who's in front, controlling the audience.
I know you have Bernard in there.
Yes. And Charlie Sexton, different combination. As it goes down, people watching, they're listening, and we used to have a really great sound man in the house to make sure it's presented properly.
Right.
Which is really important. Yeah, the kids come back going, wow, I never, what does that song mean? I never realized this. I never realized that. I knew that song, but I never heard that interpretation.
Right.
You can actually, you can open it up. Yeah, you can do whatever you want to do with it. The song's already laid down as a foundation for you to add to it. Or some songs you just leave alone. You just can't do nothing to the song.
Well, I think Bowie, in a sense, was a band leader, much like Dylan, where he never played the song the same way twice. He always reinterpreted it for every tour and every band he had.
Yeah. The thing with David, he would have to adapt on the guys around him and make sure that it wasn't too lopsided. So it depends on getting a tech guy and then getting, a guy who does 9-inch nails and then getting a straight rocker or Slick against that, or Gail, who's a great bass player, a singer.
Yeah.
The blend of all that stuff was interesting. Same thing we did with the Let's Dance album, doing Ricochet and doing Let's Dance, two drastically different songs. You had to sit and wait to see what's going to come up. And it was always going to be something interesting because you couldn't wait to bite onto it and put something it's about you, or you may not see it's you. He could see it better.
Yeah.
On the outside. So he sees already the potential of where to control me or where to move me around. So it would benefit him. And I'm good with that. He's taking me on the journey with him. And I love that you're allowing what I do I'm not everyone's choice of the bass player, but he saw the possibilities, and it was fantastic. People that I've worked with, they see the possibility going, if I take this guy and put him here and put him there, this would eventually enhance my relationship with the audience or whatever. And it's when you can partner up like that as a family, it's beautiful. And if it works,
it's kind of like what Miles did with Darryl Jones and Marcus and Benny Reitfeld and those guys
and Angus, which is again, the old guy takes on these young guys, these young pups, and go, all right, chill out a little bit. We're gonna grow into this slowly. Understand me completely. Miles, it's a schooling, and you have to be ready for that kind of schooling. For that kind of stuff, you have to really you got to know the background. Because he won't have you play anything from the 50s or the 40s because it's just Miles moving forward, and it's great. And some of that stuff is Dave was mentioning earlier. But some of those albums are like, wow, ESP, and like there's different things and different colors, and it's going, wow, what was he thinking that day? Where were you? Same thing with David. What were you that morning? What were you eating that day or something? And the thing with David, not harp too much on David, it's he just come in clean. Sometimes you just come in and you hear something in a corner. Somebody drops something, it hits a rhythm, or somebody's playing something odd against something else in another room, which is great. And he hears that kind of stuff, which is really beautiful. You can hear symphonic being in different rooms. And I love that. And I love that I was there, gifted and blessed that I was there at that point in time to share my resources and learn more from him, and Rod and everybody else who I worked with, including Joe Bonamassa, including Nona Hendryx. I give a blessing and gratefulness of being able to do what I love to do and being able to get away with it.
Hey, David, you want to go through track by track and
pick what you want?
Yeah, well, let's. I'd like to talk a little bit about gear.
Let's that minor subject.
Yeah. A lot of gear in my life. Now I'm using. Actually, I have to write it down because what I've been using the last few years is this company called Eich from Germany, EICH.
Okay.
And they're an amazing German company. And the guy, the builder, is a bass player too. So he knew how to build cabinets. He would build like 10-inch, 12-inch, 15-inch speakers. I use the 212 cabinet, small, and they're very light. I'm thinking, is that going to have enough bottom end? But the guy's such a mad scientist. He's built this whole rig up with the heads, with a 1,000-watt head. And that's what I use on stage all the time now. I have a rig in Europe, sits in a rehearsal place in Amsterdam. It sits there, so whenever I need it, they ship it to wherever I start a tour. At the end of the tour, it goes back, and I have it set up here, the same identical setup.
Uh-huh.
And that, nowadays we have little gear that sounds absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
It just I have my 10-inch, my 12-inch here. It's like it's kicking. I use it.
I would agree. 12 inch is the way to go. It really is.
Tight. It's tight. 15 will be the most. I've done 18, which is too floppy. 15, it depends on the tour. Bonamassa, but I always use 12s. 12, it's just you get the right balance of the kind of player that I am, where I get the low 5 if I'm playing a 5-string to B. But these days, they make some great gear. I mean, small gear that you can bring to a club or to a stadium.
Where are your basses coming from now?
Now, a company called B&G out of Israel, out of Tel Aviv, which is what I've been playing lately. I don't know if you've seen that live.
Yes,
Bowie.
I did.
Yeah, that's the B&G. That little fucking kid's ass. That's and I named that Hebrew National. That's a towel.
Oy vey.
Oy vey, right. And that and the exotic, my four-string exotic basses. I still play the exotics.
Okay.
They're the two main basses I play.
Any pedals?
And an ESP, a bass actually ESP made years ago, and just put it in the corner somewhere. And it had a tele kind of a neck, a precision bass, and they weren't using it for anything. So I kind of picked it up and went, "What's wrong with this bass?" We're not really using it. Going, "You kid, this shit sounds great." So I took it out, and those three are the main ones I take out now if I do something like a session or whatever.
And your strings?
LaBelle.
Oh, LaBelle. Okay, flats, rounds.
45 to 100s, round rounds, and I have a flats for the Epiphone bass.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The Epiphone. I have, in case, because producers are real picky about it's too much sound. You sensitive bitch. Let's get the fuck on. It's trying to be so groovy. Going, really? Okay. So I go do it, and then going, oh, it's a little dead. Hello, you want to hear 60 stuff, 50 stuff? Let me know. I'll take you there. So when I do, they're going, that doesn't sound like it. I said, really? I said, you're using digital equipment. How about analog? To match it all together. So again, I'll sit there going, what do you hear? What would you like? How much space do I have? And where's the chart? So I look at it, look at him. Usually, lately, last few years, most of those guys, they're saying they're producers, they're engineers, don't know. They really don't know what they're talking about. They're just going, yeah, give me that. I said, that's not a bass, that's a keyboard. Oh, okay, like, okay, give me the Let's Dance sound. Okay, that's a bass and a keyboard. No, it's not. I said, yeah, it's a keyboard and a bass switch first, and then we opened up the Moog on top of it. Oh, okay. Oh, why'd you do that? I said, I didn't do that. Now David did that because that's what they wanted. So it's a funny conversation these days. But yes, those are the three main basses I use now. Depends on the session, depends on the call. But live, those girls go out with me. Yeah.
Much session work, or are you doing stuff at home?
Just doing stuff at home, or somebody's, for a moment now, we've been doing stuff at other people's house. Bass lines for people in Turkey and Europe, doing a lot of world music stuff. Africa, England a lot, New York stuff. And I just come in and do bass lines or whatever, and which is strange. I put it down and then I get it back going, where's the bass? Because they hear it at the top end. Like, okay, I wasted my time doing that. But some of them get it. I tell them, can you remix that a little bit? And then they go back going, oh, wow, that's, that matches the line with this horn line. So, yeah, it kind of does.
And so what do you think about the coming live? You think it's coming back?
Maybe next year. I would hope so. Once we get all our shots, once we get all inoculated and get through this new dawn, this new day we have right now for the year, because we were supposed to go out in September with the Bowie celebration thing. I think next year a lot more bands will be out. Probably Europe will be the first one headline, doing a lot more shows than the States will. Yeah. The promoters are really gun shy, and they should be, because it's expensive. And I think everyone, meaning everyone, even the big bands, should really reconsider their fee. Everyone, down to promoters, down to agents, down to ticket people, really reconsider your fee going back into this. Don't jump into it thinking we're leaving off where 1920, 2019 was. People should really be considerate of the audience, because there really is not that much money around. And there's some places that have money, but I think musicians and artists, agents, all those people should really be considerate and be respectful moving forward.
Good point.
Because it's if we move forward nice and easy, all those festivals that we love to do in Europe will come back, but we have to be respectful of it. I mean, it's hard to say that because there's some bands who may have a hit in June and they want to go and do these big, it's like, again, you still have to play it so we're all winning, not just you. You have to really play fair. I still want to keep doing I still want to play live. I still want to do sessions. I still want to be 16. That's basically like you guys.
Yeah.
I still want to feel 16. I want to go back to the album and listen and go, oh, man, that's a great bass part, great drummer, and
things really changed March 11th, didn't they?
Yeah. But, it's just, I still want to do what I do, 67s, but, I'm still 16 in my head.
Let's talk about the tracks you wrote with, or you did with Rod that you pointed out, Rebel Heart and Moment of Glory. Now, you had... you have a beautiful tone on those songs. You had Bernard Edwards was producing those, right?
Yeah, because there were a couple of times where Bernard would come into L.A. and would have a second bass player. And if I was available, I'd always be there because we get along so well together. And I'm such a big fan of Bernard. And Bernard and Tony from Chic, Thompson, we all had, from the Bronx and Brooklyn, very small family that we all knew each other. And it was great having Bernard, and it helped him out because he could sit back and produce Rod Stewart. And he knew what kind of stuff was needed for the rock stuff and R&B stuff. He knew what was capable. And if he wanted to play bass on something, I'd just sit there. I'd just sit out and let him group on something. Yeah, Rebel Heart was it's a shuffle. And I think the demos, we wrote demos up, the bass was very quiet. So it wasn't really distinctive. I just kind of felt, and Bernard felt, you should put, this thing needs the bass up front. Like
you kind of open it up. You open it up after the sax solos.
Yeah, like a rock shuffle kind of a thing. And it was co-written with Jeff Golub and Chuck Kentis with Rod. The four of us pieced that song together at a rehearsal place. And it just needed that bass to be up front like that.
Yeah.
With the vocals. Because originally it was mixed. When the original came out, before the album came out, we heard the mix and they were going to, I think they were going to actually not use the song. Bernard just said, I'm putting the bass up a little hot, make it a little hotter. Bernard's knowledge, knowing, and he was right. Make it a little hotter. So it's much more aggressive. It sounds live. And it's in your face a little bit.
That's about it for another edition of the Bass Guitar Channel radio show. I want to really give a thank you to Carmine Rojas. Oh, man, what great information. Thank you so much. It's so sad that you're living on the West Coast now. It's only been 40 years. We never get to see each other. In any event, also a great thank you to Tom Semioli of knowyourbassplayer.com. Check out his stuff. It's really incredible. We'll be on next week with John Reagan of Peter Frampton, John Waite, Ace Frehley's Comet, loads of folks. Again, have a great week and we'll see you next week. This is once again David Gross for the Bass Guitar Channel radio show on CygnusRadio.com.